Before I start the story, I want to tell you to subscribe because only 2% are subscribers, and at 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video.
The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning circuits and metal. Lieutenant Kyla Voss of the Tarquinian Guard lay dazed among the debris of her downed spacecraft. Her ship, a sleek reconnaissance vessel designed for stealth and speed, was now nothing more than a tangled heap of metal. It was nestled in the dense green underbrush of Seraphine, a planet lush with towering ferns and thick canopies that now served as the grave for her mission. Kayla groaned, pain lancing through her body as she attempted to move. Her left leg was badly injured, and her vision blurred, a clear sign of a concussion. Around her, the remains of her ship smoldered, casting a haunting glow in the twilight of the alien world. Every breath was a struggle, the air humid and heavy, unfamiliar to her lungs. The sudden crash had left her disoriented, with the last moments before the impact a jumble of alarms and her own shouts. Her crew? She couldn't remember what had happened to them. Were they alive? Had they escaped? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but her own survival demanded immediate attention. As she tried to sit up, a sharp pain shot through her side, causing her to collapse back to the ground. The forest seemed to close in around her, alien sounds echoing through the trees, calls of creatures she had never heard, rustles of movements she couldn't identify. Fear mingled with her pain, a primal reminder that she was not only hurt, but also horribly alone. Just as despair began to claw its way into her thoughts, a rustling noise not far from the crash site caught her attention. She tensed, her military training kicking in despite her injuries. Through the haze of her pain, she saw a figure approaching. It was tall and seemed to move with a cautious yet confident gait. Human, her mind registered, which was impossible. This sector was uncharted by Earth-based expeditions. The figure stepped closer into the light, revealing a young man with a rugged look, his clothes marked by the journey through the underbrush. He stopped a few feet away, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Hey, are you all right?" he called out, his voice carrying a strange accent that was definitely human. Kayla's mind raced. How was this possible? A human on Seraphine? Despite her confusion and mistrust, the need for help overrode her hesitation. She tried to speak, her voice coming out as a harsh whisper. "Help me." The man didn't hesitate. He rushed to her side, his movements swift and sure. As he knelt beside her, Kayla could see the genuine worry in his eyes. "I'm Max. I'm going to help you," he said, assessing her injuries with a surprisingly calm demeanor. "Let's see what I can do about that leg." His hands were gentle yet firm as he fashioned a splint from the remnants of her ship. Despite the surrealness of the situation, Kayla felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to die alone on this strange world after all. Max worked quickly to stabilize Kayla's leg using scraps of her spacecraft's hull and some of the dense foliage, which he fashioned into makeshift bandages. His actions were measured, showing a familiarity with field medicine that surprised Kayla. She watched him, her mind still trying to grasp the reality of a human presence on this uncharted planet. "How did you find me?" Kayla managed to ask, her voice a hoarse whisper amidst the sounds of the alien forest. "I was mapping the region when I saw your ship go down. It's not every day you see a spacecraft crash on Seraphine," Max replied, not looking up from his task. "You're lucky I was nearby." Kayla's mind raced with questions about his origins and his presence, but the pain and exhaustion pulled at the edges of her consciousness, urging her to focus on the immediate need to survive. "Are you alone here?" she asked, the situation making her wary despite the help he offered. "Yeah, I'm part of an exploratory team, but we operate independently most of the time," Max answered as he tightened a knot on the bandage. "We've got a camp about 2 kilometers north from here. I can take you there once I've got your leg fixed up." Kayla nodded, her training reminding her to be cautious, but her current options were limited. As Max helped her to a sitting position, she surveyed the destruction around her. Her ship, once a symbol of the Tarquinian Guard's technological prowess, lay in ruins, its mission of peaceful exploration reduced to twisted metal and scattered hopes. "Thank you," she said, her eyes meeting his. There was an earnestness in Max's gaze that softened her suspicions. "Don't mention it. We humans have a saying, 'Leave no man behind.'" "Guess that applies to extraterrestrial lieutenants too," Max joked lightly, trying to ease the tension. Kayla managed a faint smile, appreciating his attempt at humor despite the gravity of her situation. With her leg now somewhat stabilized, Max helped her to her feet. She leaned heavily on him, her body weak from injury and shock. Each step was a test of her endurance, but Max's steady support kept her moving. The sun began to set, casting long shadows through the dense foliage and bathing the alien landscape in a golden hue. The beauty of the moment was not lost on Kayla, but the severity of her situation lay heavy on her heart. Her thoughts drifted to her crew. Were any of them still alive, or was she the sole survivor? As they made their way slowly towards Max's camp, the first stars began to appear in the sky, twinkling through the giant leaves overhead. Kayla felt a mixture of wonder and sorrow looking at them, reminded of her mission and how far from home she was. Yet, the presence of this human, Max, gave her a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The journey to Max's camp was slow and fraught with challenges. Every few steps, Kayla's leg throbbed painfully, but she gritted her teeth and persevered, leaning on Max for support. As they navigated through the dense underbrush, the encroaching darkness of Seraphine's night began to set in, casting everything in a ghostly pallor. Max broke the silence. "It's not much further, just over this ridge and through a small clearing we've set up right by a stream." Kayla nodded, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other. She was exhausted, her body screaming for rest, but the survival instinct ingrained by her military training pushed her onward. As they approached the camp, Kayla observed how well hidden it was, nestled between towering fern-like plants and draped with natural vines. A small illuminated tent stood at the center, surrounded by various pieces of human technology, some of which Kayla recognized as standard exploration gear, and others that were curiously alien to her. "This is it," Max announced, helping her into the tent. He carefully laid her down on a makeshift cot. "I'll get you some water and first aid supplies." While Max busied himself with gathering supplies, Kayla took the opportunity to assess her situation more critically. She was stranded on an alien planet, injured, and depending on a human, an alien to her, whom she had only just met. The reality was overwhelming, yet the calm efficiency with which Max handled the situation was reassuring. When Max returned, he brought a small medical kit and a canteen of water. "Here, drink some of this," he said, handing her the canteen, "and I'll clean those cuts." As he tended to her wounds, Kayla observed him closely. "Max, why are you here? This sector isn't marked for human exploration." Max didn't look up from his task as he answered, "Our team is part of a private expedition. We're not exactly sanctioned by any of the major Earth governments. We're sort of freelance explorers." "Freelance explorers," Kayla repeated, mulling over the concept. It was alien to her structured understanding of space exploration, strictly controlled and meticulously planned. "Yeah, we take on jobs that others consider too risky or not profitable enough," Max explained, meeting her gaze. "But we also get to see things no one else does, like meeting real aliens," he added with a wry smile. Kayla managed a small smile in return. "I suppose that makes us both explorers of a sort." "Yeah, it does," Max agreed. He finished bandaging her wounds and sat back. "Look, I know this is weird for you, trusting a stranger, especially a human, but I promise you're safe here. We'll figure out a way to contact your people." "Thank you, Max. Given the circumstances, I find this fragile alliance of ours to be a preferable alternative to solitude," Kayla said, her tone sincere. Max chuckled. "Fragile alliance, huh? I can work with that." Over the next few days, as Kayla began to regain some strength, the makeshift camp that Max had set up became a place of learning and cultural exchange. Max was a patient teacher, and Kayla was a quick learner. They spent hours talking, Max teaching her more English while she taught him the basics of Tarquish, the official language of Tarquilia. "You say it like this," Kayla would correct gently, smiling as Max stumbled over another Tarquish word with its complex clicks and tonal sounds. "It's like my tongue needs to be a gymnast," Max joked, trying again until he got it right, much to Kayla's amusement. Their sessions were filled with laughter and moments of frustration, but each mispronounced word and corrected sentence brought them closer. Language was a bridge between their worlds, and as they built it, they shared stories of their homes. Kayla described the floating cities of Tarquilia, how they drifted among the clouds, tethered to the ground by massive chains. "It's like living in the sky, with the stars just above and the world far below," she explained, her eyes lighting up with the memory. Max, in turn, spoke of Earth's mountains, its vast oceans and crowded cities. "Nothing floats except for boats," he said with a grin. "But there's a lot of beauty in the permanence of it." As they exchanged stories and language lessons, they also shared meals, Max introducing Kayla to human foods that were safe for her to eat, and Kayla explaining the dietary customs of her people. It was during one of these meals that they heard the rustling in the underbrush that surrounded their camp. Kayla tensed, her recent combat instincts flaring up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her hand going to a piece of the wreckage she had fashioned into a crude weapon. Max nodded, his expression turning serious. He moved quietly to the edge of the tent, peering out into the darkening forest. "Stay here, I'll check it out." "No, I'll come with you," Kayla insisted, not willing to be left behind. They moved together, cautiously stepping outside. The sounds had stopped, but the feeling of being watched lingered in the air. As they scanned the surroundings, a shadow moved swiftly between two trees, a flash of something large and definitely alive. Kayla's heart raced. The wildlife they had encountered so far had been mostly passive, small creatures. This was different. Max saw it too. "Back to the camp," he ordered quietly, and they retreated. Inside, Max went to his supply bag and pulled out a couple of handheld lights and a more robust-looking device. "What is that?" Kayla asked, eyeing the device warily. "It's a deterrent. Sends out a high-frequency sound that should keep most animals at bay. But we should be on guard tonight," Max explained as he activated the device, setting it up at the entrance of the tent. They settled into an uneasy vigil, the device humming softly in the background. The night was long, filled with strange sounds, but no further sightings of the mysterious creature. "Whatever it was, it seems to have kept its distance," Max said as dawn approached, the first light filtering through the foliage. Kayla nodded, relieved but still vigilant. "We need to be prepared in case it comes back." Max agreed. "We'll strengthen our defenses today, and keep working on our communication. It's our best tool out here." The next morning brought a palpable tension to the camp. Max and Kayla awoke to the strange stillness of the forest, a silence that seemed unnatural after the previous night's disturbances. They ate their breakfast in quiet contemplation, each lost in thoughts of the unknown dangers lurking in the shadows of Seraphine. After their meal, Max suggested they do a perimeter check. "We need to know what we're dealing with, and if it's still out there," he said, picking up a sturdy branch to use as a makeshift weapon. Kayla nodded, her military training kicking in. "I agree. Let's assess any potential threats and fortify our position. Knowledge is our best defense." They ventured out from the safety of their camp, cautiously moving through the dense underbrush. The forest was alive with the sounds of distant creatures, a stark contrast to the eerie quiet of the dawn. As they walked, Kayla pointed out and explained the different plant species and their uses, which she had learned from her preliminary scans of the planet before the crash. Suddenly, Max held up a hand, signaling for silence. They both froze, listening intently. There it was again, a subtle rustling, different from the natural movements of the forest. It was deliberate, calculated. Something was watching them. "Circle back," Max whispered, his eyes scanning the thick foliage. "We need to see what it is without it noticing us." They doubled back, moving with stealth honed by their respective training, his on Earth, hers on Tarquilia. As they approached the source of the noise, they spotted it. A creature, larger than any they had encountered before on Seraphine. It had thick, scaly skin and moved with a predatory grace. Its eyes, when they met the light, reflected a menacing glow. Kayla's grip tightened on her makeshift weapon, her body tensing for a potential confrontation. Max placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a silent message of solidarity. "We need to lead it away from the camp," Max murmured. "On my signal, make a break for the east. I'll go west. We'll circle around and meet back at the camp." Kayla nodded, understanding the plan. The creature hadn't spotted them yet, giving them the element of surprise. On Max's signal, they sprinted in opposite directions, the creature's head snapping towards the sound of their movement. Kayla ran with all her strength, the pain in her leg a distant concern compared to the adrenaline surging through her veins. She could hear the creature crashing through the underbrush behind her, but it was slowing, confused by their divergent paths. Reaching the camp first, Kayla quickly grabbed more defensive tools, anything that could be used as a weapon. Max arrived moments later, slightly out of breath but unharmed. "It worked!" he panted, leaning over his knees. "It's gone for now, but it'll be back. They're hunters." Kayla nodded, her mind racing with tactical options. "We need to prepare. If these creatures are native to Seraphine, there might be more. And next time we might not be so lucky." The preparations took most of the day, with Max and Kayla setting traps and reinforcing their camp's makeshift defenses. By the time dusk fell, they had created a perimeter of deterrence and warning systems, using bits of technology from the crash site and natural resources collected from the surrounding area. As night enveloped the forest, the atmosphere grew tense. They took turns keeping watch, knowing that the creature, or creatures, might return at any moment. Kayla's earlier encounter had shown them both how real the threat was, and neither wanted to be caught off guard. During her watch, Kayla sat quietly, her senses heightened to every sound, every rustle of leaves. She thought about her crew, hoping they were safe, but the silence from her communications equipment told her not to be too hopeful. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed through the camp. A trap had been triggered. Kayla was on her feet in an instant, weapon in hand. Max joined her seconds later, his own weapon ready. "Which direction?" he whispered. "North side," Kayla responded, her eyes scanning the darkness where the underbrush had started to shake. Together, they approached cautiously, moving silently through the dense foliage. As they neared the source of the disturbance, the silhouette of a large creature became visible, caught in one of their net traps. It thrashed violently, trying to escape. "It's not the same one," Max noted quietly, observing its smaller size and different scale pattern. Kayla nodded. "Maybe a juvenile or a different species. Either way, it's dangerous." As they deliberated their next move, a low growl resonated from behind them. They turned swiftly to see another creature larger than the first, its eyes glinting in the low light. This one was undoubtedly a mature version, and it was not happy about their presence near its trapped kin. "We need to back away slowly," Max advised, keeping his eyes fixed on the large creature. Kayla agreed, and they began to retreat, but the creature charged, faster than they expected. The camp, with all its preparations, suddenly seemed very far away. Reacting quickly, Max threw a small device to the ground, which emitted a bright flash and a loud bang, their last makeshift flash grenade. The creature halted, momentarily stunned, giving them the precious seconds they needed to sprint back to the safety of their camp. Once there, they didn't stop to catch their breath. Instead, they immediately checked their arsenal of makeshift weapons and prepared for a possible siege. The creatures were now aware of their presence and, judging by their aggressive behavior, would likely come back. Throughout the night, sounds surrounded them, growls, snaps, and the rustling of leaves. Each noise tightened the knot of tension between them, but no further attacks came. As dawn broke, the forest quieted, and the immediate threat seemed to have passed. Exhausted but alive, Max and Kayla sat back at their camp, their backs against each other. "We held them off," Max said, his voice low and tired. "For now," Kayla replied, equally weary. They might think twice before attacking again, but we can't assume anything. Max nodded. We'll keep improving our defenses, and maybe it's time to think about finding a more secure location. Kayla agreed. And we need to keep trying to contact any of your team or mine. There's strength in numbers. In the quiet aftermath of the night's skirmishes, as the first light of dawn began to soften the darkness of Seraphine's forest, Max and Kayla took the opportunity to regroup and plan their next moves. While Max checked the perimeter for any signs of the creatures returning, Kayla attempted once more to repair her communicator with the limited tools available at the camp. Seated inside the tent with the device's components spread out before her, Kayla's fingers worked meticulously. Max watched her for a moment, admiring her focus and expertise. He then joined her inside the tent, handing her a freshly brewed cup of something akin to coffee. Here, I thought you might need this, he said. Thank you, Kayla replied, accepting the cup with a nod of appreciation. She took a sip, finding the bitter taste surprisingly comforting. Max sat down beside her, his eyes on the communicator. You think you can get it working? It's possible, but I'll need more time, she responded, her gaze returning to the tiny circuitry. Our technology is robust, but the damage from the crash was extensive. As she worked, Max's curiosity got the better of him. Kayla, why were you on Seraphine? You mentioned a reconnaissance mission, but what were you looking for? Kayla paused, considering how much to reveal. After a moment, she decided that trust was essential if they were to survive together. My mission was to observe and collect data on the less explored sectors of this galaxy. We believed these planets could hold new resources, possibly even be suitable for habitation, but we were not prepared for an attack. An attack? Max echoed, his interest piqued. Yes, she continued, her voice tinged with a mix of anger and sadness. We were ambushed by an unknown vessel shortly after entering Seraphine's orbit. It was unlike any technology we've encountered. They disabled our ship, and we crashed. I don't know what happened to the rest of my crew. Max's expression hardened. That means there might be more than just hostile wildlife on this planet. Someone doesn't want visitors. Exactly, Kayla agreed. And it makes repairing this communicator even more critical. If I can get a distress signal out, my people will come. Max nodded, understanding the stakes. Then let's get you everything you need to fix that communicator, and maybe start thinking about a backup plan, in case help doesn't arrive in time. They spent the morning working together, Max fetching parts and tools from the wreckage, while Kayla painstakingly pieced the communicator back together. Their conversation drifted from technical explanations to more personal stories about their lives before this mission, building a camaraderie that felt both unlikely and entirely necessary given their circumstances. By midday, Kayla managed to restore power to the communicator. They waited with bated breath as she adjusted the settings, trying to send out a signal. Finally, the small screen lit up, and a burst of static filled the tent. It's working! Kayla exclaimed, relief washing over her face. Max let out a whoop of joy, then quickly turned serious. Now we wait, and stay alert. Whoever shot you down might still be out there. They settled into a routine over the next few hours, alternating between monitoring the communicator for any signs of a response and strengthening their camp's defenses. As the day progressed into afternoon, Kayla and Max continued to strengthen their camp's defenses while keeping an eye on the communicator, hoping for a response. The brief moments of excitement from the working communicator had given way to a tense wait. However, this waiting period provided them with an opportunity to delve deeper into understanding each other's cultures and backgrounds. Sitting under the shade of a large, leafy seraphine tree near their camp, they shared stories of their respective planets. Kayla spoke of Tarquilia's vast oceans that sparkled under twin moons, and the grand tournaments held in honor of their ancient deities. Her descriptions painted a picture of a world both alien and fascinating to Max. Max, in turn, described Earth's diverse landscapes, from snow-capped mountains to vast deserts that stretched as far as the eye could see. He talked about the bustling cities, the quiet countryside, and the myriad cultures that made Earth unique. It's strange, Max mused. How two beings from different corners of the universe can find common ground so far from home. Kayla nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and gratitude. In space, finding common ground is often the key to survival. And perhaps it's not so much about the distance, but about the willingness to understand and respect each other's differences. Their conversation was interrupted by a beep from the communicator. They both turned towards the sound with hopeful expressions. Kayla rushed over and read the screen. It's a response! My people have received the distress call, and they are preparing a rescue mission. That's great news! Max exclaimed, a broad smile spreading across his face. How long until they arrive? Kayla's expression sobered slightly. It could be a few days. They need to navigate carefully, considering what happened to my ship. We'll keep the camp secure and wait it out. We've handled everything this planet has thrown at us so far, Max said confidently, clapping her on the shoulder. Yes, we have, Kayla agreed, feeling a renewed sense of hope. With the imminent arrival of Kayla's rescue team, they decided to use their remaining time to share as much knowledge as possible. Max demonstrated some basic survival techniques, including how to make fire without matches and ways to purify water using materials found in the wild. Kayla, in turn, taught Max some basic Tarquinian martial arts maneuvers, which were not only useful for self-defense, but also served as a way to strengthen their physical fitness. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the camp, Max and Kayla enjoyed a simple meal of local fruits and preserved rations from Max's supplies. The atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and stories. It was a moment of peace amid uncertainty, a testament to their growing friendship and trust. Tomorrow, we should scout the area one more time. Make sure there are no surprises when your team arrives, Max suggested as they cleaned up after the meal. Agreed, Kayla said. And maybe we can find more of these fruits. They're not bad. Max laughed. Not bad at all. I'll make a forager out of you yet, Lieutenant. With Kayla's rescue team potentially days away, she and Max focused on ensuring their camp was as secure as possible. They spent the following morning reinforcing their perimeter, double-checking the traps and alarms they had set up, and making sure their supplies were adequately stocked and hidden. Max led the effort to fortify their defenses, incorporating more of the natural resources around them. If we use these vines and branches, we can create a more robust barrier. It'll give us more warning if something tries to get close, he explained as he weaved thick vines between trees. Kayla, meanwhile, was adjusting the settings on her communicator to keep a constant signal to her people, updating them on their status. This will ensure they can track our location directly as they approach. It will also alert us if there are any significant changes in their arrival time, she said, her fingers moving deftly over the alien device. As they worked, they discussed various contingency plans. Max was particularly concerned about the possibility of another attack, not just from the wildlife, but also from whoever had initially shot down Kayla's ship. We've been lucky so far, but we can't assume that'll continue. We should prepare for the possibility of an encounter with hostile forces. Kayla agreed, her expression serious. I've been trained in combat and tactical scenarios. I can teach you some defensive maneuvers specific to Tarquinian military training. It might come in handy. They spent the afternoon practicing those maneuvers. Kayla was a strict but patient instructor, correcting Max's posture and technique. Max proved to be an adept student, picking up the basics quickly. The physical activity helped to distract them from the stress of their situation, and they both appreciated the opportunity to strengthen not just their defenses, but their personal bond. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the forest, they returned to the camp to rest and plan for the next day. Their dinner conversation was light, mostly revolving around stories from their respective planets. But as they ate, their attention was drawn to a sudden noise, a rustling in the underbrush that was too deliberate to be just an animal. They were on their feet in an instant, weapons ready. Max whispered, "Position yourself behind that tree, I'll check the perimeter." Kayla nodded, moving silently to take cover while Max crept towards the source of the noise. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the only sounds the faint rustle of leaves and Max's careful footsteps. After a tense few minutes, Max returned, signaling all clear. It's one of the traps. Something triggered it, but it looks like it got away. Kayla relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained vigilant. We should reset the traps tonight, just in case. Max agreed, and together they worked under the starlight to reset their defenses. It was a clear night, and the twin moons of Seraphine shone brightly, casting a surreal glow over the landscape. Despite the beauty of the scene, they were all too aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Whatever comes, we'll face it together, Max said as they finished their work, looking over at Kayla with a reassuring smile. Indeed we will, Kayla responded, returning the smile. They headed back to their tent, the weight of their situation ever present but tempered by their confidence in each other's abilities and their preparedness for whatever might come their way. As night deepened around their fortified camp, Max and Kayla settled into a vigilant, uneasy watch. The twin moons of Seraphine cast a dim, silvery light, giving the forest an ethereal glow. Despite the beauty, the tension was palpable, each rustle of leaves and distant animal call putting them on edge. They took turns resting, one always keeping watch while the other tried to catch some sleep amidst the unsettling sounds of the alien jungle. Max was on guard when a soft beep from the communicator startled him. He quickly checked the device, finding a reassuring message from Kayla's people confirming their coordinates and ongoing approach. They were close, but not close enough to relax their guard. Max woke Kayla with the news, and together they scanned the area, noting the eerie calm. It's too quiet, Max whispered, his voice barely audible. Like the calm before a storm. Kayla nodded, her instincts agreeing with his. We should check the perimeter again, make sure nothing's out there waiting. Armed and alert, they made their way around the camp. The traps and sensors they had set up remained undisturbed, an ominous sign that made Kayla frown. This isn't right. It feels like we're being watched. As if on cue, a low growl echoed through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. The creature or creatures they had encountered before were back, and this time they seemed more determined. Max and Kayla quickly retreated to the center of the camp, backs together, watching as shadows moved at the edge of the light thrown by their small fire. Then, all at once, several large figures emerged from the darkness, the predatory beasts they had faced before, now joined by even more of their kind. Without hesitation, the creatures charged. Max and Kayla sprang into action, using everything they had learned and prepared. They dodged and weaved, leading the creatures into traps that slowed them down or disabled them temporarily. Max used a makeshift spear to keep them at bay, while Kayla utilized her combat skills to incapacitate any that got too close. The battle was intense and chaotic, with Max and Kayla managing to hold their ground through a combination of strategy and sheer will. After several harrowing minutes, the attack seemed to wane, the creatures retreating back into the darkness, wounded or discouraged by the fierce resistance. Breathing heavily, Max and Kayla surveyed the camp. It was a mess, but it had held. They were alive, but the night wasn't over yet. We need to stay alert. They might regroup and come back, Kayla said, checking their remaining weapons and traps. Max nodded, moving to reset some of the defenses. Let's reinforce everything we can. We're not out of this yet. They worked together, strengthening their camp's defenses once more and tending to each other's minor wounds. As they labored, the communicator beeped again, a message from Kayla's rescue team. They were only hours away, pushing through as fast as they could. Encouraged but exhausted, Max and Kayla took up their positions again, watching the forest warily. The rest of the night passed in tense silence, the creatures no longer attacking, but the threat of their return hanging over them like a dark cloud. As the first rays of dawn began to cut through the dense canopy of Seraphine's forest, Max and Kayla felt a weary sense of relief. They had survived the night's assault, but the forest remained ominously silent, as if holding its breath. The duo knew their ordeal wasn't over until Kayla's rescue team arrived. "We should hear from them soon," Kayla said, her eyes fixed on the communicator, which lay on a makeshift table strewn with other salvaged parts and tools. "They promised they were hours away." Max nodded, rubbing his hands together to warm them by the dying embers of their campfire. "Once they get here, we'll have a lot to explain, and maybe you'll finally get the chance to go home." Kayla smiled softly, though her gaze remained tinged with concern. "Yes, home. And what about you, Max? What will you do?" "I guess I'll head back to my team," Max replied, though he sounded unsure. "They're probably wondering where I've disappeared to." As they talked, the communicator beeped loudly, breaking the quiet tension. Kayla quickly grabbed it, reading the incoming message. Her face lit up with relief. "They're close, just a few kilometers out. They've asked us to remain where we are and keep signaling." "That's the best news we've had in days," Max said, his relief palpable. He helped Kayla adjust the device to send a continuous signal. As they worked, they discussed the possibility of meeting again, perhaps under less dire circumstances. "I would like that," Kayla said sincerely. "Maybe you could visit Tarquilia officially. We could use someone with your skills and your kind of courage." Max laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment. But sure, I'd love to see your floating cities." The morning passed slowly as they made final checks around the camp, ensuring that everything was clear for the rescue team's arrival. They didn't wander far, both too exhausted and wary of another attack. Finally, the sound of engines broke through the natural sounds of the forest. Max and Kayla looked up to see a small squadron of sleek, silver ships slicing through the sky, descending toward their location. They both stood, a mix of excitement and apprehension on their faces. The ships landed gracefully a short distance from the camp, kicking up dust and leaves. As the hatches opened, several figures in uniform stepped out, moving quickly towards them. Kayla stepped forward to greet them, speaking rapidly in Tarquish. Max watched, feeling a mix of happiness for her and a twinge of sadness at the impending goodbye. As Kayla introduced him to her rescuers, explaining their ordeal and his role in her survival, the respect and gratitude from the Tarquilian soldiers were evident. One of the commanders turned to Max, speaking in careful but accented English. "We are in your debt, Max. You have our thanks." "It was the right thing to do," Max replied, feeling somewhat awkward under their formal gaze. As the Tarquilians prepared to leave, Kayla turned to Max. "This isn't goodbye, Max. Let's consider it a see you later." "See you later, then," Max said, managing a smile as he watched her board the ship. With a final wave, Kayla disappeared inside, and the ships lifted off, soaring into the sky and disappearing from sight. Max stood alone in the clearing, the silence of the forest enveloping him once more. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment and a newfound connection to the vast universe beyond his own world. After watching Kayla's rescue ship vanish into the azure skies of Seraphine, Max felt a peculiar blend of solitude and anticipation wash over him. He lingered in the clearing for a while, absorbing the silence that had once again settled over the forest. Eventually, he gathered the remnants of their shared camp, tools, leftover supplies, and a few personal items Kayla had left behind for him, including a Tarquilian communication device as a keepsake and for future contact. Max started the trek back to his own camp, his path shadowed by the towering trees and the occasional flutter of alien wildlife. The forest seemed almost peaceful now, a stark contrast to the chaos and danger of the previous days. He contemplated the events that had unfolded, marveling at the unexpected friendship and alliance he had formed with Kayla. The thought of visiting Tarquilia brought a sense of excitement and wonder about what the future might hold. As he walked, Max reviewed the skills he had learned and the experiences he had endured. He felt different now, changed in a way that went deeper than just survival. He had engaged with another species on a profound level, fought alongside them, and saved a life. It was a testament to the potential for understanding and cooperation between different worlds. Upon reaching his camp, Max was greeted by an eerie silence. It was clear that his team had not returned yet, leaving him to wonder about their fate and the adventures they had encountered. He set about tidying up, preparing for their eventual return, all the while planning how to share his experiences. Later, as the sun began to set, Painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Max activated the Tarquilian communicator. He sent a message to Kayla, updating her on his safe return and expressing a hopeful sentiment for future meetings. Though he was unsure when or how the message might be received, it felt like an important connection to maintain. That night, Max sat by a newly kindled fire, reflecting on his solitude. The crackling flames and the nocturnal sounds of the forest brought a calming end to the day's journey. Yet the tranquility was tinged with a sense of foreboding, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of this alien world and the broader universe. Max knew that the adventure was far from over. There were still unknown dangers lurking in the unexplored corners of Seraphine, and potential threats from other interstellar travelers who might not be as friendly as Kayla. He resolved to prepare more thoroughly, to train and plan for any eventuality. The serene silence of the early morning was shattered by the distant hum of engines, a sound Max had become attuned to during his stay on Seraphine. He quickly gathered his gear and moved towards a clearing that provided a good vantage point to observe the approaching craft. As the aircraft, a sleek, human-made explorer vessel, touched down, the relief on Max's face was evident. His team disembarked, looking weary but unharmed. They were surprised to find Max waiting for them, his presence unexpected but immensely welcome. "Max, you're okay!" exclaimed Sarah, the team's geologist, as she ran up to embrace him. The rest of the team followed, clapping him on the back and expressing their relief and happiness at seeing him safe. "I was starting to think I'd have to search this whole planet myself," joked Liam, the team leader, his tone light, but his eyes scanning Max for any sign of injury. Max laughed, sharing quick, warm greetings with each team member. Once the reunions were over, they gathered around the campfire where Max recounted his extraordinary encounter and partnership with Kayla. He spoke of the crash, the hostile wildlife, and how he and Kayla had worked together to survive. The team listened in awe, especially intrigued by his description of the Tarquilian technology and culture. "It sounds like you've made quite the ally out there," Liam noted, impressed by the story. "Yeah, and hopefully we'll see her again. She mentioned the possibility of arranging a visit to Tarquilia," Max shared, his tone hopeful. "That would be an incredible opportunity," Sarah added, her eyes wide with excitement. "The scientific and diplomatic potential is enormous." As the team discussed the possibilities, they also made plans to finish their mission on Seraphine. Max's experience had provided valuable insights into the planet's environment and potential dangers, which would now be crucial for their continued exploration. The next few days were busy as the team resumed their work, now with added caution and heightened interest in establishing peaceful contacts with other species. Max took on a new role, leveraging his first-hand experience to guide the team's interactions and exploration strategies. As they worked, Max often found himself looking up at the stars, thinking about Kayla and the adventure they had shared. He felt a deep sense of anticipation about the future and the next time he would see his Tarquilian friend. The mission on Seraphine eventually concluded successfully, with the team gathering a wealth of data and leaving the planet better prepared and more knowledgeable than when they had arrived. As they boarded their spacecraft to return to Earth, Max felt a mix of satisfaction and nostalgia. As Max's spacecraft orbited away from Seraphine, he took one last look at the verdant planet, shrinking in the distance. The adventure had been more intense and rewarding than he could have ever anticipated. He leaned back in his chair, the hum of the engine a comforting reminder of his return to familiar territory. But his thoughts lingered on the friendships and the unexpected challenges he had faced. Inside the ship's common area, the crew was gathered, busy with their post-mission tasks. Max joined them, his presence immediately lighting up the space. His team appreciated his upbeat spirit and the stories he shared. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about the connections they could make out there in the cosmos. "Here's to the friends we make in unlikely places," toasted Liam, raising a cup of synthesized coffee in the air. The team echoed his sentiment, their cups clinking in the zero gravity, small droplets floating away like sparkling stars. Max smiled, feeling a pang of longing for the day he would meet Kayla again. As the celebration continued, Max drifted towards the viewport, his eyes fixed on the stars. The promise of future adventures filled him with hope, and he knew that the universe had many more secrets to reveal. In the quiet of space, Max reflected on the lessons he had learned. His experiences with Kayla had not only tested his survival skills, but had also deepened his understanding of diplomacy and cross-cultural communication. These were lessons he would take with him into any future missions, perhaps even into eventual diplomacy with other alien races. As the spacecraft continued its journey back to Earth, Max used the ship's communication system to send a message to Kayla, updating her on his safe return and reaffirming their plans to meet again. He knew the vast distances of space could delay their reunion, but he held on to the hope that it would happen sooner rather than later. Max's thoughts were interrupted by Sarah, who floated over with a digital tablet in hand. "Look at this data we collected from Seraphine," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "There are indications of rare minerals we didn't know existed." Max leaned over to look at the screen, his professional curiosity piqued. "That's incredible," he replied, his mind already racing with the possibilities. "We should include this in our report to the Exploration Committee. It could open up new missions." "Yeah, and maybe pave the way for more cooperative missions like yours with Kayla," Sarah suggested, her gaze thoughtful. Max nodded, the potential of such future collaborations filling him with a sense of purpose. "I hope so. There's much we can learn from each other." As Earth came into view, a small blue dot growing steadily larger, Max felt a sense of homecoming, mixed with the anticipation of new horizons. He was returning not just with data and samples, but with new insights and a renewed sense of the interconnectedness of all beings, regardless of their origin. The spacecraft entered Earth's atmosphere, the familiar pull of gravity anchoring him back to his home planet. As the ship landed and the hatch opened, Max stepped out onto the tarmac, greeted by the fresh air and the faces of colleagues and the media, eager to hear about his experiences. Max knew this was just the beginning. As he shared his story, he emphasized the importance of understanding and cooperation in space exploration. He spoke of Kayla and the bond they had formed, hoping it would serve as a beacon for future missions to approach the unknown not just with caution, but with open hearts and minds. Back on Tarkilia, Kyla Voss stood before the High Council, a distinguished gathering of her world's leaders, who listened intently to her recounting of the events on Seraphine. The chamber, a vast dome encrusted with luminescent stones, echoed with the weight of her words. "As we explore the unknown, it is crucial that we not only prepare for the physical challenges, but also for the unexpected alliances that can shape our understanding of the universe," Kayla spoke confidently, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the dome. The council members nodded, their expressions a mix of concern and intrigue. Kayla's experience had ignited a broader discussion about the protocols for encountering and interacting with other species, especially humans. "We've learned that cooperation can be as valuable as the technology we deploy," Kayla continued, advocating for a new approach to interstellar relations. Her plea was for a more inclusive exploration strategy that embraced potential partnerships with humans and other species. After the meeting, General Zorix, the head of Tarquillian exploration programs, approached her. "Lieutenant Voss, your experience has provided us with much to consider. Your suggestion for joint missions with humans is unconventional but compelling." "Thank you, General. I believe such missions could lead to greater advancements and ensure peaceful relations," Kayla responded, her stance firm yet respectful. The general nodded slowly. "I will propose a pilot program based on your recommendations. It seems we are at the dawn of a new era in our exploration efforts." As Kayla left the council chamber, her thoughts turned to Max and the promise of their future collaboration. She walked through the floating gardens of the capital, her mind racing with possibilities. She initiated contact with the Human Exploration Committee, offering insights from her mission and extending an invitation for a joint exploratory venture. Meanwhile, Max, back on Earth, received her communication with a broad smile. Sitting in his office surrounded by maps and star charts, he drafted a response. "Kayla, your proposal couldn't have come at a better time. The committee is eager to discuss this. Let's make it happen." Weeks turned into months as preparations for the joint mission commenced. Both Tarkilia and Earth worked diligently to align their technologies and protocols. Kayla and Max stayed in close communication, their exchanges filled with technical details and mutual encouragement. Finally, the day came when the first joint mission was launched. A spacecraft carrying both human and Tarquilian crew members left Earth's orbit with Kayla and Max aboard, destined for a newly discovered planet thought to be rich in resources and scientific potential. As the spacecraft traveled through the cosmos, Kayla and Max shared a moment in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "It's incredible, isn't it? Just a few months ago, we were fighting for survival, and now we're leading a mission together," Max said, his voice filled with wonder. "It is," Kayla agreed, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "It shows how much we can achieve when we work together. This is just the beginning, Max." Together, they watched the vast expanse of space unfold before them, the stars not just points of light, but symbols of hope and the endless possibilities that awaited them. The mission was more than an exploration. It was a testament to the power of unity and the beginnings of a deepening alliance between their worlds.